So I'm going to tell you a little story. I'm actually going to read you a story about Nergal and Erishgagal. Nergal is Mars in Mesopotamian mythology, and this story depicts Mars's cycle and him meeting up, or Mars meeting up with Venus in the underworld, which would be in astrology Mars, Venus, and Sun conjunction. Mars, Venus, and Sun conjunctions happen every 6.4 years, and that ends up being over 32 years a rose. It makes, from our perspective here on Earth, the rose shape around our globe. And so it's a very special cycle, and one that not many people know about. Of course, Mars meets up with Venus and Mars meets up with the Sun a lot more times during those 32 years. But this is the cycle between Mars, Venus, and the Sun, and it makes a rose. So I'm going to read you the story, and I'm going to stop in between to comment. There are two tablets that tell the story. One was found in Babylon, or I should say in Sultan Tepe, which is now Turkey, the area of Turkey, and the other one was found in Egypt. And Egypt actually had it in a library that I guess the elite kept it. Both of them are quite broken up, and so a lot of times, and I think in this version, this one is on the internet. I'm going to read this one because it's nicely put together. The academic ones have big gaps in it and lots of academic explanation in between, and this one has just pulled it together, although it does have it in a particular version, and so I'm going to do a little bit of comparison. So one is an older version and one is a newer version, and they do bring the two together to complete the story, and there's lots of gaps, but we still get a pretty good story out of this. So Anu made his voice heard, and he spake. He addressed his words to Kaka. Kaka, I shall send you to Kumunji. You must speak thus to Ereshkigal, saying, it is impossible for you to come up. In your years you cannot come up to see us, and it is impossible for us to go down. In our months we cannot go down to see you. Let your messenger come and take from the table, and let him accept a present for you. I shall give him something to present to you. So they are having a banquet, and Ereshkigal wants to come, and they say, no, you're in the underworld, that's where you belong, you cannot come up, but you can send your messenger. So Kaka is the messenger. Kaka went down the long stairs of heaven, and he reached the gate of Ereshkigal. He said, gatekeeper, open the gate to me. Kaka, come in, and may the gates bless you. He let the god Kaka in through the first gate. He let the god Kaka in through the second gate. He let the god Kaka in through the third gate. He let the god Kaka in through the fourth gate. He let the god Kaka in through the fifth gate. He let Kaka in through the sixth gate. He let the god Kaka in through the seventh gate. He entered into her spacious court. He knelt down and kissed the ground in front of her. He straightened up and stood and addressed her. Anu, your father sent me to say, it is impossible for you to go up. In your years you cannot go up to see us, and it is impossible for us to go down. In our months we cannot go down to see you. Let your messenger come and take from the table. Let him accept a present for you, and I shall give him something to present to you. Ereshkigal made her voice heard and spake. She addressed her words to Kaka. O messenger of Anu, our father, you have come to us. May peace be with Anu, Enlil, and Ea, the great gods. May peace be with Namu and Nash and the pure goddess. May peace be with the husband of the lady of the heaven. May peace be with Natura, champion of the land. Kaka made his voice heard and spake. He addressed his words to Ereshkigal. Peace is indeed with Anu, Enlil, and Ea, the great gods. Peace is indeed with Namu, Nash, and the pure. Peace is indeed with the husband of the lady of the heaven. Peace is indeed with Natura, champion of the land. Kaka made his voice heard and spake, and he addressed his words to Ereshkigal. May it be well with you. So there are some gaps in the story, and so I'll just kind of make a little sign where there's a gap, and there are lines missing as well. But the nice thing is you can see there's a repetitiveness to the story, and so even though there are gaps missing in the tablets, because of the repetitive nature of it, it is easy to sometimes figure out what the words were or are going to be, and also they are also similar to the descent of Inanna, which is the story of Venus going into the underworld, and so they can kind of compare and understand how the story and the storytelling went. Okay, so Ereshkigal. So now where I've left off, there's about 26 lines of missing. But here we go. Ereshkigal made her voice heard and spake. She addressed the words to Visor Namtar. O Namtar, my Visor, I shall send you into the heaven of our father Anu. Namtar, go up the long staircase of heaven. Take from the table and accept a present for me. Whatever Anu gives to you, you must present to me. And now there's 26 lines missing. So now Ea addresses Nergal, and there's some missing path. The gods are kneeling there together before him, the great gods of the Lord of Destiny, for it is he who controls the rights of the gods who dwell with Erala. Why do you not kneel before him? I keep winking at you, but you pretend not to realize. And so what we gather from this, even though there's missing words here, is that Nergal, Ereshkigal has sent up her messenger, and everybody has shown the messenger greatest respect because he is representing Ereshkigal, and Nergal has decided not to. And they're nudge, nudge, wink, wink, come on, show some respect. And Nergal is Nergal. He's Mars. He's not going to. Okay, so then Nergal addresses Ea, apparently expressing a wish to visit Ereshkigal. I will rise to my feet. You said, we'll double it. And when Ea heard this, he said to himself, something. Then Ea made his voice heard and spake. He addressed his words to Nergal. My son, you shall go on a journey you want to make. Grasp a sword in your hand. Go down to the forest of the Mesu tree. Cut down the Mesu tree, the taro tree, and the juniper. Break the Kanatutu tree and the Simbaru tree. When Nergal heard this, he took up his axe in his hand, and he drew his sword from his belt, and he went down to the forest of the Mesu tree and cut down the Mesu tree, the taro tree, and the juniper, broke off the Kanakatu tree and the Simbaru tree. He made a throne for a far-sighted Ea. He painted it blank as a substitute for silver, so he uses something that substitutes silver. He painted it yellow paste and red paste as a substitute for gold. He painted it with blue glaze as a substitute for lapis lazuli. The work was finished and the chair complete. Then Ea, called out and laid down the instructions for him. So we're gathering that this chair is the gift, basically. Maybe a beautiful throne or something. It's a chair. So then Ea, called out and laid down instructions for him. My son, about the journey which you are wanting to make. From the moment you arrive, follow whatever instructions I give you. From the moment they bring you a chair, do not go, do not sit upon it. When the baker brings you bread, do not go, do not eat the bread. When the butcher brings you meat, do not go, do not eat the meat. When they bring you a foot bath, do not go to it, do not wash your feet. When she, Ereshkigal, has been to the bath and dressed herself in fine robe, allowing you to glimpse her body, you must not do what men and women do. So I feel like this is like the first instance of that scene you see in every movie where, just a minute, I'm just cleaning, I'm just finishing up, or I'm just going to have a shower, and they're waiting around, and they glimpse over and they see a little skin, and it's like, ooh. So here it is, the first instance ever in history of that scene. Nergal sets his face towards Kumunji, to the dark house, dwelling of Arala's gods, to the house of which those who enter cannot leave. And so this is an important point. When you go to the underworld, you're not supposed to leave. You cannot leave the underworld. It's the place of the dead, and that is why Ereshkigal could not come up. On the road we're traveling is one way only, to the house where those who enter are deprived of light, where dust is their food, clay their bread. They are clothed like birds with feathers. They see no light. They dwell in darkness. They moan like doves. The gatekeeper opened his mouth and addressed the words to Nergal. I must take back a report to the gods standing at the door. The gatekeeper entered and addressed his words to Ereshkigal, my lady. I'm assuming he's announcing that Ereshkigal is there, Nergal is there, has come to see us. I will identify him. Ereshkigal made her voice heard and spake to Namtar. Namtar replies, let me identify him. Let me blank him at the outer gate. Let me bring back to my lord a description of him. Namtar went and looked at Era, and now we're getting the name Era. So actually, Nergal and Era are the same god, just in a later version of the god, he is called Era. And when they put these two stories together, Era is the word they use to capture that this is from a different tablet. So Era is in the shadow of the door. Namtar went in and looked at Era in the shadow of the door. Namtar's face went livid as cut tamarisk. His lips drew dark as the rim of Sur vessel. Namtar went and addressed his lady, my lady. When you sent me to your father, I went and entered the courtyard of Anu, and all the gods were kneeling, humbled before him, and all the gods of the land were kneeling, humbled before him, and the gods rose to their feet in my presence. Now they, Nergal, have gone down to Kumunji, and so basically he's realized it's the god who hasn't even bothered to kneel down to respect her. Now Ereshkigal says, Ereshkigal made her voice heard and spake. She addressed her words to Namtar. My dear Namtar, you should not seek Anil's power, nor should you desire to do heroic deeds. I can never say that word. Heroic deeds. What come up and sit down on the throne of the deity of the royal Diaz? You perform the judgments of the broad earth. Should I go up to the heaven Anu, my father? Should I eat the bread of Anaki? Should I drink the water of the Anunnaki? Go and bring the god into my presence. So she's basically said, give it a break. Namtar went and led in the god Era. He let Nergal through the gate of the first, the gate of Nidu. He let Nergal in through the second gate, the gate of Ensharar. He let Nergal in through the third gate, the gate of Andushurima. He let Nergal in through the fourth gate, the gate of Anurelia. He let Nergal in through the fifth gate, the gate of Andukuka. He let Nergal in through the sixth gate, the gate of Anshuba. He let Nergal in through the seventh gate, the gate of Ngiji. He came into the broad courtyard, and he knelt down, kissing the ground on the front of her. He straightened up, stood, and addressed her. So now he's actually shown her respect. He's knelt, he's kissed the ground, he's straightened up, and he's dressed her. Anu, your father, sent me to see you, saying, sit down on that throne, judge the cases of the great gods who live with Arkala. As soon as they brought him to a throne, he did not go to it. He did not sit on it. When the baker brought him bread, he did not go to it. He did not eat the bread. So now this is all the stuff that he's been warned not to do. He's like, oh, here it's all happening. I can't do it. I'm not going to. So the brewer brought him beer. He did not go to it. He did not drink the beer. They brought him a foot bath. He did not go to it. He did not wash his feet. And when she went to the bath and dressed herself in fine robe and allowed him to catch a glimpse of her body, he resisted. His heart's desire to do with what men and women do. So he resisted anything sexual, basically. So there are 13 lines missing, and in the next scene, Nergal has somehow, I don't know what she did in those 13 lines, but Nergal, she went to the bath and dressed in a fine robe and allowed him to catch a glimpse of her body, and he gave in to his heart's desire to do what men and women do. So somehow she got him. The two embraced each other and went passionately to bed, and they lay there, Queen Ereshkigal and Era, for the first day and the second day. They lay there, Queen Ereshkigal and Era, for the third day and the fourth day. They laid there, Queen Ereshkigal and Era, for the fifth day and the sixth day. When the seventh day arrived, Nergal, without something, took away after him, "Let me go and my sister blank. Do not tremble. Let me go now, and I will return to Kurunji later." Now, he's in the underworld. He cannot leave. So what happens? Nergal, her mouth turned dark with rage. Nergal went and made his voice heard and spake. He addressed his speech to the gatekeeper, Ereshkigal. "Your lady sent me, saying, I am sending you to the heaven of Anu, our father. So let me be allowed out." The message blank. Nergal came up along the long stairway to heaven, and he arrived at the gate of Anu, Enlil, and Ea. Anu, Enlil, and Ea saw him and said, "The son of Ishtar has come back to us." Now I just want to pause, because Ishtar is also is a later version of Inanna. So he is said to be Ishtar's son. But Ereshkigal is also kind of a version of Venus. So Ishtar, Inanna, and Ereshkigal all represent Venus, but in different phases of their orbit, basically. The son of Ishtar has come back to us. She, Ereshkigal, will search for him, and Ea, his father, must sprinkle him with spring water, and bareheaded, blinking and cringing, let him sit in the assembly of the gods. So they let him back in. They're not supposed to, but they do. Ereshkigal, blank to the bath, her body, she called out, and there's a lot of blanks here, the chair, sprinkle the room with water of something, sprinkle the room with water of something else, sprinkle the room of water of something else. The blank of the two daughters of Shitu and Emshara, sprinkle the waters of something. The messengers of any of our father who came to see us shall eat our bread and drink our water. Now, I'm not too sure what this entire phrase means, but somehow I feel like it has something to do with their tradition in the underworld. This is their rules and tradition and their culture. Namtar made his voice heard and spake, addressed his word to Ereshkigal, his lady, the messenger of Anu, our father Anu, who came to see us, for daylight has disappeared. Ereshkigal cried out grievously, fell from the throne to the ground, and straightened up from the ground. Her tears flowed down her cheeks. Era, the lover of my delight, I did not have enough delight with him before he left. Era, the love of my delight, I did not have enough delight with him before he left. Namtar made his voice heard and spake, addressed his word to Ereshkigal, send me to Anu your father, and let me arrest the god. Let me take him to you, that he may kiss you again. So they're like, this ain't right. He's not supposed to leave, and he's breaking your heart. So let me go get him, because this isn't right. Ereshkigal made her voice heard and spake, and addressed her words to Namtar, her advisor. Go, Namtar, you must speak to Anu, Enlil, and Ea. Set your face toward the gate of Anu, Enlil, and Ea, to say, ever since I was a child and a daughter, I have not known the playing of other girls. I have not known the romping of children. The God whom you sent to me and who has impregnated me, let him sleep with me again. Send that God to us, and let him spend the night with me as my lover. I am unclean, and am not pure enough to perform the judge of great gods. The great God who dwell here with Erela, if you do not send that God to me, according to the rites of Erela and the great earth, I shall rise up the dead, and I will eat the living, and I shall make the dead outnumber the living. So she's mad, and she's saying he hasn't followed the rules, and I've lived here all my life lonely and haven't done the same things that everybody else has done. So send him back down right now. Namtar came up the long stairway of heaven, and he arrived at the gate of Anu, Enlil, and Ea. Anu, Enlil, and Ea saw him and said, What have you come for, Namtar? Your daughter sent me to say, ever since I was a child and a daughter, I have not known the playing of other girls. I have not known the romping of children. The God whom you sent to me and who has impregnated me, let him sleep with me again. Send that God to us, and let him spend the night with me as my lover. I am unclean, and I am not pure enough to perform the judging of the great gods who dwell within Arkala. If you do not send the God to me, according to the right of Arkala and the great earth, I shall rise up the dead, and I will eat the living, and I will make the dead outnumber the living. Ea made his voice heard, and he spake, addressed the words to Namtar. Enter, Namtar, the court of Anu. Search out your wrongdoer and bring him. So they're like, okay, I guess we gotta get Nergal, and we gotta set this right. Namtar went and addressed his words to his lady, my lady, about the sending me of heaven to heaven of Anu your father. My lady, there was only one God who sat bareheaded, blinking and crying at the assembly of gods. Go, seize that God and bring him to me. Ea, the father, sprinkling him with the spring water, and as he was sitting at the assembly of the gods, barehead blinking and cringing. So he knows he's done wrong. Namtar came up the long stairway of heaven, and when he reached the gate of Anu, Enlil, and Ea, Anu, Enlil, and Ea saw him and said, What have you come for, Namtar? Your daughter sent me to say, Seize that God and bring him to me. Then enter, Namtar, the court of Anu, and search out your wrongdoer and take him. He went straight to the God, but did not recognize him. Went straight up to the second and third, and did not recognize him either. Then make his voice heard and spake, addressed his word to Ea. Let Namtar, the messenger who has come for us, drink our water, wash and anoint ourselves. So then there's 15 lines missing. So Namtar made his voice heard and spake, addressed his word to Era, all the rights of the great underworld, when you go from blank. So now I think there's a decision that he needs to go back down there. And now they're giving him advice. So he's got another chair, which actually we'll talk about later. I'll just read it. Namtar made his voice heard and spake, addressed his word to Era, all the rights of the great underworld. When you go from blank, you shall carry the chair blank, you shall carry blank, you shall carry blank, you shall carry blank, you shall carry blank. So there's a number of 7 things actually. And we only know of one, which is a chair, because the others are not available to us because of damage to the tablets. Do not grapple with him and let him bind your chest. Era took to heart the speech of Namtar. He oiled his strap and slung his bow, and Nergal went down the staircase, long stairway to heaven. And he arrived at the gate of Ereshkigal, and he said, "Gatekeeper, open." Okay, so now in this version, it says, he struck down Nedu, the doorman of the first gate, and did not let him grapple with him. He struck down the second doorman and did not let him grapple with him. He struck down the third doorman and did not let him grapple with him. And all the way down to the seventh, he struck down every doorman and he did not let him grapple with him. And he entered her wide courtyard and went up to her and laughed and seized her by her hairdo and pulled from the throne her tresses and seized her by her tresses. And the two embraced each other, and they went to bed passionately. And they lay there, Queen Ereshkigal and Era, for the first and second day, and so on. They lay in bed for 6 days altogether. Now, I just wanted to say, it's almost done, but in another version, which is this version, I'm not quite sure where it comes from. It's probably a compilation of the two versions. But I do have a version, the Sultan Tees tablet version, and that scene is a little bit different, where he's now going down to the underworld, and for the second time, because he has to, he's kind of being sent there. It looks as though when Ereshkigal sent her porter up there to get him, he disguised himself and the porter couldn't find him, and then he goes down. Okay, fine, I'm going to go down, and he gets some advice to bring certain things. And in that version that I just read, he's kicking down the door, and he doesn't let anybody grapple with him, and he gets there and he grabs her by the hair and they go off to bed. In the Sultan Tees tablet, and this is from 1960, I believe, it says, the porter of the gate hung up the gate and did not allow him to take it. So let me back up. On the arrival of the gate of Ereshkigal, he says, "Porter, open the gate for me." The porter opened the gate, hung up his chair, and didn't allow him to take it. So in this version, he takes away his chair and he doesn't allow him to take it. And then the same with the second. The porter of the gate takes something from him, and in each of the gates, something is taken from him. And this is sort of true to the version of the story of Inanna and even Ishtar. When she goes to the underworld, things are taken away from her because she is going into the underworld. She is being stripped. And it is interesting, in this version, he is also being stripped of things, and in the version that I read to you, originally he's kicking down the door and it doesn't look like anything is being stripped of him. He's not letting anyone grapple with him. So this is very important to consider when we are looking at this descent of Mars into the underworld and the power that Mars has, and I'll come back to that in a minute. So let's go back to finish the story because it's almost done. So the two embraced each other and went passionately to bed, and they lay there for 6 days. And when the 7th day arrived, Anu made his voice heard and spoke, addressed his word to Kaka, his visor. "Kaka, I shall send you to Kamunji, to the home of Ereshkigal, who dwells with Erala, to say that God whom I sent to you, something blank forever, those above blank, those below blank." So from this, many have surmised that, and sorry, after that there are 25 lines missing, so we don't quite know how it ends, but many people have surmised that he's there forever. Like there's a forever, the word forever is there, so something is forever. So it could be that he stays there forever, or forever he needs to go into the underworld and out, and to the underworld and out. we don't quite know because we don't have the text to say it. However, the academics somehow have surmised that he has, there is actually, I would say there is two ways to look at it, and there is two ways to look at the Mars energy altogether. So there is Mars, and he's bright in the sky, and he travels along, and the cycle of Mars is about 2.5 years, and it can be a little bit longer, a little bit shorter. And every 6.4 years, he goes into the underworld, and when he gets there, Venus is there. And so this is definitely that story of Venus and Mars meeting up. And it is a very sexual relationship, and there's a power dynamic there. There's a power dynamic that is happening. And because it's the underworld, it is a story of causing us to, well, in Nergal's case, to look at his cockiness, because he's a warrior, a cocky warrior, and to humble himself and to look at his passions and his ability to say yes and no to things. He easily says no to food and to chairs and to whatever, but the sexual thing, said no the first time and she got him the second time. So it's a constant, I don't think it's a message to reject women, but to understand our passions, or and both for men and women. And it is around the masculine, and so there is, I think, a shift that happens over time, and even in our interpretation of it in these days, the academics have interpreted it as, you know, he's a violent person, and he's taken over her throne, and he's the king of the underworld now. She's become submissive to him. And that is one way you can look at it. The other way that you can look at it is that he has gone down into the underworld, and just like everyone else, he's been stripped of he's been humbled. He's been humbled along the way. And in that process of humbling, he has found a love and a relationship with Ereshkigal, but he has learned that he has to defer to her. And so I actually see it a little bit differently than the academics do, in that he's gone down to the underworld, he's been stripped of things, and he gets there and he realizes, okay, this is Ereshkigal's world, and I want to be with her, and I'm going to have to give up something to do that. And he does grab her by the hair, and come on, we have seen those passionate scenes where it's a little, rough and tumble, but hot and sexy at the same time. So there is a version where I think he's knocking down the doors, and he's taking away, and he's getting mine, and he's taking over her kingdom. And there's another version, which is the one that kind of leads to spiritual growth. And I think this is a story of spiritual growth, and even through the ages and our interpretation of it, and how even the academics have looked at it, it is a lesson in the patriarchy, and how we learn from that Mars energy. Now, the one thing I want to say about Mars energy is that it is the god of war. It is the god of ambition. It's drive. It's our drive. It's our ambition, and it can not really care too much about other people in getting what it wants, and that is a very Mars energy. And we can see that Martian energy has taken over our world, and that is, in fact, what is patriarchy. It's the Mars energy having taken over our world. I think as we grow and develop, and really understand and incorporate Mars meeting up with Venus is an opportunity to go through these lessons of humbling ourselves to our emotions, to our passions, to our feelings, to rules and regulations. Because I do think that Venus is around, especially in older times, Inanna was around, the rules of civilization, the rules of society and culture. And I think that is still true very much to this day. So she teaches him a lesson around those things, and he is humbled in that, in my opinion. So I hope you enjoyed that walkthrough of Nergal and Ereshkigal and how it interlinks with Mars. And we'll see you soon.